We have to have goals beyond success. If we just have an idea of success and that's my goal, if you hit it, meaning will end for you. You have to have goals that success won't accomplish. And those are going to be more internal goals. This is who I want to be, not just what I want to do.
Welcome to the Young and Driven Podcast, where we explore the world of entrepreneurship. Join us as we dive into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to start, grow, and scale a successful business. We're on a mission to share our experiences, failures, insights, and advice with others. Whether you're just starting out in your entrepreneurial journey or you're looking to take your business to the next level, tune in and join the conversation about what it takes to succeed in the world of business.
We going full throttle.
Welcome to the Young and Driven Podcast, literally. I am driving down with my dad, and we're going to around Tampa, Florida, where we found a house, and I'm moving my stuff in this car, driving all the way from Pennsylvania. But I figured this would be a pretty good opportunity to have a podcast conversation with my dad, which I've never done before. Even when he had a podcast, when he has a podcast, I was never featured as a guest, and I'm a little bit frustrated at that. But I think to make up for it.
But if you were a guest, then I'd be talking to you. You would be talking to me.
That's true. So I was never featured as a guest. So I guess I just had to I have to host him, and so yeah, I want to have a conversation about. I mean, this is the first time that me and my family are moving away from being 5 minutes away from them. Grown up there all my life. Grown up in Pennsylvania all my life, and want to ask him some questions about parenting, ask him some questions about pastoral ministry, ask him some questions about me and about us and our family. So,
Great.
Dad, thanks for coming on.
Sure. I have to say that we're heading toward Jacksonville. And when we get close to Jacksonville, we have to listen to Skinner.
We just listened to Leonard Skinner?
Yeah, because Skinner is Jacksonville.
Okay.
So I'm just letting you know that's about 45 minutes away.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That checks out. Hopefully you can hear the sound okay. If you can't, that's all good. We'll just make it work. But let me start this off then. So tell people about yourself in the sense, when did you start your ministry? When did you move to Pennsylvania? How long have you been a pastor?
Wow. I was born and raised in Georgia. We're going through my home state right now. But up Atlanta, if you look at the geography, Atlanta is up more northwestern. We're about 7 hours away from there, down here along the coast, just passing by St. Simon's and Jekyll Island, on our way to Jacksonville, across Florida, to Tampa area. So that's where we are. But I grew up in Atlanta, suburbs, and lived there. Kind of grew up, and my family was great. You know, still love them all. My dad's
most of them.
Yeah, I love them all. My dad passed away about 12 years ago. Mom's still alive. She's doing great. So yeah, I grew up, went to school, played soccer in college, in high school. Later played soccer in college. In fact, yesterday we stopped by my old alma mater, and I took a tour there. We talked about stuff. It's at college where I came to Christ unexpectedly. Was not seeking, was not looking. God interrupted my life.
You were a Marxist.
I was a Marxist, yeah. So we went by all the places where we did our protests and those kind of things, which you do as a Marxist in college. And so February 1981, God arrested me and changed my life. I've been on that walk ever since. One of the people instrumental in that was a girl who I met in college who was a Christian, who is now my wife. We started dating shortly after that.
The flirt to convert method.
Yeah.
Found in the Christian community, where if you find somebody that isn't a Christian, but you like them, but you can't date them because they're not a Christian yet,
yes.
So you have to convert them.
Yeah.
So you flirt with them to get them attracted to you,
Yeah.
right? And then you have to convert them to Christianity,
Yeah.
and then you can be like...
Well, yeah, and then as long as you spend the next 2 years like we did, in different parts of the country.
Yeah, so long
So
distance.
yeah, so you can do a
Yeah.
long distance relationship, and if you're going to do it right, if you're going to do flirt to convert, or what we used to call missionary dating correctly,
Missionary dating.
yeah,
That sounds like something else.
I know,
It
but
doesn't sound
that's what it's called. You also have to do it without a cell phone. You have to use a phone with a cord, and you have
That's
to
not-
write letters in
That's
handwriting.
That's not going to work out for a lot.
So
of
if
people
you
for
do
a lot of
that,
kids.
then you're free to flirt to convert. Otherwise, you got to go the right way and just pick from people who are already following Jesus.
All right, so you became a Christian in '81 because
Yeah.
because mom flirted to converted. She missionaried you. That sounds weird. And
I was flirting more than she was.
then- okay.
Yeah.
And
What
so
did I know?
ex-Marxists with a poli-sci major,
Mm-hmm.
moving up to Pennsylvania.
Well, went back to Atlanta. Kind of restored my relationship with my folks, which had been kind of trash from my hijinks before I came a Christian.
Yeah.
Spent 2 years there, but while Jill, my wife, finished up her school and then went back. She was from Pennsylvania. I kind of grew a little bit, I think, as a believer, and finally I got some good advice from my pastor, and he said, I think you're kind of ready to go up, but you need to make the move. Don't force her to come down to an unfamiliar area without having anything to offer her. And so I moved up, looked for a job, couldn't find one, was about to move back. The Lord sort of provided what ended up being about a 2-year ministry position that convinced me I wasn't supposed to be in ministry ultimately. But
Convinced you weren't supposed to.
I wasn't supposed to be. And but we got married in that job, and but eventually I started to realize we didn't really have connection to a church because the ministry was not connected to a church, and so we didn't have anybody to really care for us. And so I felt like I came to a conviction that I need to make sure that a local church is my priority. I started attending a new church that had just been planted. We both started attending there about 6 months after we got married, and I thought this is a good church for us. We started going, and 39 years later, we're still there.
So wait, you started going to a church in '84,
Yeah,
and then you became a pastor of that church in '91,
93.
'93.
Yeah. So I got a job working with a guy in commercial real estate. So my profession was commercial real estate, mostly appraising commercial real estate, office buildings, apartments, that kind of stuff.
So wait, let's quick summarize.
Yeah.
Married, '84, moved to Pennsylvania.
After I got married, before I got married.
Before you got married. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Before you got married, moved to Pennsylvania, got married in '84, started having kids in '88, right?
Yeah, started having kids in '88. Was in commercial real estate at the time.
Real estate, and then had 3 kids and became a pastor at '93.
Yeah. So I had 3 of my kids, and three girls. And about a couple of years after that, I'd been talking to the elders of the church that they were asking me, what do you think? Do you think you're called? I'm like, I don't think I am, because I love my job. I don't want to leave my job. But the Lord just sort of worked on my heart, and I after about a year of praying through it, I came to a personal conviction that this was God's will for me, and left my job, which I loved. I loved my job, and so it was hard to leave. I'm not one of those guys that has always had a desire for ministry. In fact, I'm 30 years into it, and I'm kind of like, I'm never sure if I was ever called. I've been doing it for 30 years. I feel like I'm in there now. I'm kind of committed.
Yeah.
It'd be tough to jump ship now, but it's been a great ride. It's been a lot of, wonderful experience. But I just haven't been that guy who felt a burning desire to do ministry. I was kind of like, I'll just, I want to serve God, but I love doing commercial real estate. So,
But so here, let me ask you on that. So like you've been a pastor. So you've been a pastor 30 years.
30 years.
30 years.
Yep. Same church.
Same church, which in and of itself is impressive. How many people do you think you've cared for in one way or another? Like, so how many people including people that are active members, but like people
wow.
of those 30 years that like,
Oh, wow.
like give me a rough estimate of like people that have been under
Personally,
your care. Yeah.
2,000.
Okay.
But I feel like, 1,500 to 2,000. I feel like I could.
Yeah.
If I saw a list of names of everybody I interacted with, I could probably pick 1,500 to 2,000 that I, in some sense, had some connection with. I counseled with them. I did their wedding. I did a funeral. I just, I met with them in different situations. I discipled them. Yeah.
Okay.
Like that.
So, what you just mentioned that you never really felt called.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that I know. I have thoughts on this where it's like the term calling to ministry or calling to a vocation. I'm moving away right now. We're actively moving.
Yeah.
So I don't particularly feel like I'm called to Florida. What are your thoughts on someone that would come to you and say, I feel like I'm called to be a pastor?
Well, I mean, there's kind of a formal understanding of what calling is to ministry. They typically talk about it in terms of an internal call and an external call. So an internal call is some desire or some burden to be in ministry, to do ministry. And it's interesting because that whole idea is based on the fact that, well, if I'm not doing it vocationally, then I'm not doing ministry. Really, we're all in ministry. If you're a follower of Christ and you're living a Christian life, you are in ministry. So really, we're talking about vocational ministry. That's what you're really talking about. And in most contexts, you're talking about being a missionary or a pastor. So, if you just limit it to that, then there's usually sort of, for most people, there's an internal call, a sense that I either want to or I'm supposed to do something. And then what we call an external call, which is some confirmation from someone else who is in a position to really assess and evaluate you if your own internal sense is also met with a kind of gifting and impact on people that says you're called. There are people who love to study theology, who love to read. They can't think of anything more than spending their time reading and writing and speaking on theology, which is actually, for most pastors, not a lot of what they do. You're doing a lot of people work and you're running ministry. So
you've seen a lot of pastors, you've trained a lot of pastors, you've taught a lot of pastors.
Yeah. I'm just going back to the internal and external call. You kind of need both. You don't want to just sort of like, I got an internal call, I'm going to go do it. You need somebody saying, yeah. And they obviously need people who will be willing to be ministered to by you. If you drive people away, then my guess is you don't have much of a call.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But that leads me to follow up, because I'm thinking, like, you've trained a lot of people, you've talked to a lot of people that became pastors. Like, what would you say is like a consistent trait you see in someone that should be a pastor?
I think there are things you need to have. You need to have a commitment to the Bible. You need to have your life committed to, and you need to draw your understanding of life from the Bible. You can't start with I want to help people. You have to start with I want to live by and help other people live by God's word. And you need to have a love for Jesus Christ and the gospel. So those are two things that often get overlooked. People think about what skills do you have or what things you do, but if you don't have those, you're going to end up shipwrecking in some way. Either you're going to fail people, or your own faith is going to fail. It's going to go off the rails because other things become important to you. Cultural things become important to you. Secondary things become important. The praise of men become important. So you need to have those. If you don't have those, I think you've got to really question whether you can ever be effective. But with those as a basis, assuming that, I think a pastor needs to be able to think and reason theologically. In other words, needs to be able to look at life, people's lives, their own lives, situations, and understand how to apply God's word and stand on a theological position to be able to help people. You need that. You need love for people. Jesus, that's what Jesus commanded us to do. Love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Every believer should do that. but I think pastors have to be committed to loving people. You can't just be a book guy. You can't just be a speaking guy. You have to be somebody who loves being with God's people, who loves people, and who loves the lost. I think you have to be somebody who wants to see people come to know Jesus, whether that's in evangelism or people who are raising their children and helping them, evangelize their kids. So you've got to have that. I think one of the toughest things is clear from the pastoral epistles. You need to have their qualifications, their character qualifications, their behavior qualifications that you need to exhibit in order to be a pastor, and then you need to maintain them throughout your pastoral ministry. You'll never do anything perfectly, but if your life and doctrine don't match, if you say I believe this but you live this way, you're defrauding people and you're defrauding God. So those are things that you need before you ever get to what particular skills you need. You need those things.
There's a lot of people that probably are extremely ambitious and they want to accomplish a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to someone that, I guess, is entrepreneurial, or someone that, like, say to someone who's a young Christian who is trying to figure out how they can find a lot of success monetarily, while remaining a Christian? What would you say to, like, that kind of person? So, like, someone who's very ambitious and has a lot of goals that are lofty.
Yeah.
And how would you counsel them towards wisdom in making sure that they're in alignment with what God wants from them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, first of all, I think there are people who would say that Christians shouldn't be ambitious. Like, it's not humble to be ambitious, and I think that's wrong. I think ambition the right ambition is an expression of faith, is an expression of desire to use and spend your life for something that's important to you. Somebody without ambition, probably you look at their life and you don't see a lot of fruit. So ambition is good. Ambition is important. I think ambition can also reveal what we truly value. And so if somebody is ambitious for money, that says far more about what they value than an internal call of God. Doesn't mean money's bad, doesn't mean you shouldn't make it, doesn't mean there won't be people who and I know people who do very well financially, who are kingdom people. So I don't worry about money and everybody, but so success, there's two things I learned early in ministry that I think God almost inserted into my life at key points. One of them was, and these are just things I was just driving along on a road like this. I was driving between Philly and DC, and I was just reflecting on, they're having some challenges in ministry and feel like I wasn't doing what I was hoping I would do and wasn't sure what the future held. And I felt like the Lord just sort of put in my heart the idea that we have to have goals beyond success. If we just have an idea of success and that's my goal, if you hit it, meaning will end for you. You have to have goals that success won't accomplish. So, and those are going to be more internal goals. This is who I want to be, not just what I want to do. And so I think if it's okay to say I want to, I'm 26 years old and by 30 I'd like to be at this point. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's good. Or in ministry, at this point I'd like to be, preaching in my own church, whatever. That's great. But whatever that goal is, once you accomplish that, then you kind of live this sort of life where either I've accomplished the only goal that mattered, or I've just got to set whole new goals and be dissatisfied with life until I get them. And so you live perpetually dissatisfied. So you have to have goals that just don't really, that success doesn't change. I had an interesting experience when I was in college. We had a band, I was in a band in college, and it was my dream to play in a show with hundreds of people, not just, small thing, but hundreds of people, and basically get everybody into the show, and basically have a band that people were just really enjoying. We weren't very good, but we had a lot of energy. So and we brought it. So my first show went unbelievably well. I mean, people were screaming, people were, and I remember leaving it and going out and walking back to my dorm and realizing the only thing I ever wanted to do in life I've accomplished. And it was totally depressing. And it sort of taught me, man, you can't get fixated. You gotta have goals about what you're becoming, not just what you're doing.
So wait, let me speak to that, because I think like there's a cultural thing that's communicated about this topic, right? And it's a lot of times people use the imagery of like raising the ceiling, raising the bar, right? And the point of the game is to continue playing the game, right? So it's like,
sure,
you don't win, you just want to keep playing.
Yeah.
So for someone that's like, in my world, it's like the goal is to be like, I want my first $10,000 month. I want my first $20,000
sure.
month. I want my first $1 million year.
Yeah.
Right. That's like a target that a lot of people that are probably watching this would put in their heads.
Yep.
You achieved your goal, your dream, which was to play for hundreds of people and have people be amped. And that was after your first show.
So I had pretty small goals back then.
Yeah, pretty small goals. But like, there's people that achieve the dream, and most of the people that are actually insanely successful, Grant Cardone, Alex Ramosi, Ryan Pineda, a lot of these guys, they set that kind of goal, achieve it, and then they reset to the next bar. They go to the next goal, the next goal, the next goal. It's just it might be a similar where it's like, okay, instead of 100 people, I want to play for 1,000 people.
Yeah.
I want to play this venue. I want to open for this artist. I want to sell this many records.
Sure.
Or I want to, I can monetarily just like I want to even in social media, like I want to get to this many followers and influence this many people.
Yeah.
What would you say to those types of people that continue to change the bar on that front because they achieve the goal and they're like, oh, well, I guess I should have just aimed higher?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, like guys like me talking about this, if I'm listening and I'm your audience, I'm thinking, well, he's an old dude and he doesn't have any more goals. He's just trying to survive at this point, right? He's just trying to not have a heart attack and live his life. So I'm not sure that I would have a lot of credibility, but I do know this: people who are insanely successful in whatever their endeavor is, when they get to my age, they don't count the successes as what they were proud of. So, I would take it. I would look at people who are who've done what you've done, who are older, and I would look and see where'd their life trajectory go, and did they end up where they wanted to be? Mick Jagger just turned 80. He's still trying to pass himself off as a rock star. Robbie Robertson just died yesterday, leader of the band. You just recognize there are people who got there. Their journey it had goals in it, but it didn't have I've arrived. And gradually, I think what happens with life and maturity is you realize it's the experiences I have. Okay, we're crossing into Florida right now. Looks a lot like South Georgia at this point.
I'm a Florida.
He's a Floridian. Yep.
Florida man.
So not a gator though. Still a dog, not a gator. So I think you should be finding somebody who's done what you think is good to do, and trace their life back if you feel like they've lived it well.
You've done a lot of end of life care, and you've done a lot of like ministry specifically towards older people because you yourself, as you've just admitted, are old.
Yeah.
But you're caring for people that are approaching the end of life. What's a consistent theme that you have to counsel them through for people that are coming to grips with, like regrets, coming to grips with the fact that their life is ending and they didn't accomplish all the things they want to accomplish?
Yeah. Well, people my age, they look at the past, because that's about, basically for somebody like me, that's what I have the most of, is a past. I don't have a lot of future, I just got a lot of past. And so, a key part is what are you doing with the past? And so some people, they're nostalgic. They feel like they peaked somewhere back and they wish they could go back there and do that and be that. And they our culture wants you to fight for youth, fight to act young. One of the things you realize in our culture is that there's this huge emphasis on staying young, but at the same time living long. So that means there's a huge gap of when you can no longer stay young, but you're a long way from dying, right? And we have it's a cultural gap that we've created where people don't want to get older, and then when they get older, they don't want to die, so they just live frustrated. They move into maybe they have money, they move into a really nice retirement facility, but they just hang out with other old people and drive golf courses around, and which is good for for a while, I guess. So I think that people in my world, do you live with regret over what either you didn't do or what you did poorly, or do you live with nostalgia, pining for what was really good about the past? And people flip back and forth between those two. They live, and I think people in your audience, maybe they'll do the same thing. They live with regret about what they did or didn't do in high school or college or early in their career. I wish I'd have done this. I wish I'd have known this, and lived with regret. Or they're nostalgic. They had a relationship or a great experience in school or whatever. Or they, back when they were free, maybe now they're they have a family and they're like, back when I was free, I could do all these things. They live with nostalgia. So that's a tendency in everybody. So you've got to recognize. I've always got to navigate my past, not just my future. It's funny. John Piper, sort of an older preacher, I was reading something he said. He said, do you know what the past is? And he said, I just said, do you know what the past is? That's the past. The past is every moment as soon as you get past it. The present is always becoming the past instantaneously. Yeah. And so it just teaches you that you have to be looking forward. You have to learn. What you want to do is learn from the past. What you want to do is get wisdom from the past. What can I glean from this? Even my mistakes or things that happened to me. We live in a heavily victim culture these days. People want to, and sometimes legitimately do, suffer because of the effects of other people on them. But that can also become your identity.
Speak to that. So, like, for someone like, because that's my generation. To be honest, it's like a lot of people that are. It's a contrarian perspective to have extreme ownership, to say that even if someone else did me wrong, it's still my fault. It's still my thing, and I can still get over it myself. Yeah. So speak to the people. Like, what would you say when you look at this generation, and you look at teenagers especially, look at people that are entering college, people that are just graduating college, that feel like that almost might have it too easy, where their biggest issue has been homework, their biggest trial has been relationships, and maybe they've had some issues with drugs, maybe they had some issues with just in general, but like they didn't experience the life that probably the generation before you experienced, where it's like there's actual wars, there's actual things that are struggling, there's actual things that are like, there's actual tribulation that is outside of their control that they're experiencing. Do you fear for the culture of where there's so much privilege and there's so much victimhood? Do you fear for that? Do you think that there's going to be a resolution to that?
Yeah, that's interesting. First of all, I don't view like this generation, your generation, as you had it better than other generations. I think you have it different, and so you got trials and challenges that my generation didn't have. I mean, frankly, these two phones, they're a nightmare of personal growth, right? They are in the way of a lot of what we need to become, but they're essential to how we need to function. And so your generation has to navigate a world where you're doing very little face-to-face interaction. You're not resolving conflicts to face. You're either able to move beyond, or you're doing virtual relationships, and so the hard work. So your relationship network can be much thinner, broad, but much thinner, because you can do a lot of it through this medium. And I'm not dissing the medium, it's technology. It's like when the car happened, that changed everything. So technology does that. So we have to have a historic perspective that this generation has got a lot more pressures in certain ways on it. There are certain things that are being eroded, and there are certain things that are being elevated. I think the dangerous elevation of my sense of self as the test for everything around me. How does this affect my sense of self? I think that's tremendously oppressive, because it presumes that you can control things that are outside of your control for your own self-benefit. And I think it leaves people vulnerable to just continual disappointments with people, with life, with opportunities. We're told that we're victims. I think that's dangerous. I think there's and people are victims. I know people who are going to listen to this can point to, well, this is what happened to me. This is why I'm a victim. And I think, so I never want to say, well, no, just get over it. But I think most people will tell you that if that experience becomes your identity, becomes the prism through which you view life, then it becomes a trap. And somehow you have to figure out a way to not forget your past, which can be traumatic, but to not live as if that past is your present reality. So, and that's hard, because everything you're being told, the hard part about it is, I think that everything people are being told in their culture now is what I would call the expressive self. I've got to be me, and I have to communicate me, and people have to accept me. And I think that is a very fragile thing. And if you live that way, I think you're going to live with multiplying scars and a lack of ability to do the hard work of trust and forgiveness in relationships that make the relationships you want worth living.
I love that. What would you say to someone like me? Because I'm probably going the extreme end of it and say that, I've seen that extreme sense of self. I am so important that what revolves around me.
Yeah.
And I go to the opposite side of the spectrum and I say, no one matters. Nothing matters. There's nothing that we do is actually relevant. And it's nihilistic, except for the fact that I still believe in God and the gospel. And I believe that we matter in His eyes. Mm-hmm. But what would you say to me in thinking nothing I deal with is relevant to the world. It's just my own thing that I'm processing, and that's it.
Are you saying that you as a person have no potential to have good impact on another person?
Not necessarily, but I think that it is my responsibility to be faithful.
Sure.
To do what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But the results of whether or not that actually impacts is irrelevant to my call to be faithful. So the results of the affirmation I get, or the following I get, to me, I don't care if 0 people watch this or if 1 million people watch this. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's a responsibility to say, okay, I want to have conversations and I want to record them.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to post them. But I don't think that I'm very important.
Yeah.
Or that I'm more important than anybody else. Yeah. So that might be contrarian to the other perspective, which is we are all important. Let's make sure that every part of our lives are documented on social media. Make sure every thought that we have is projected on Facebook, so that when there's a cultural event that's happening, I need to go contribute my voice to that white noise. Yeah.
Well, I think you have to ask yourself, and this is the problem with social media, is the perspective that my perspective, my voice is needed, right? Or it's essential. Or if I don't give it, then I'm not, I'm not being part of the solution or part of the issue. I think you have to ask the question, whatever I'm doing, who am I doing it for? And it isn't just, well, of course I'm doing it for people. I think you need to go below that, and you have to really, I think, say, who am I really doing it for? Doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing it. Doesn't mean that, but I think if you really have the clearer idea you have of who you're doing it for, the more resilience you'll have if it isn't hitting a market that you might like, or it isn't getting the views.
Okay, can I quote you for a second?
Yeah.
It's really close to, you showed me something when we had cigars once. You said, the clearer your idea of success is, the sooner you will know if you are deviating from it.
Did I say that?
You said that.
Okay.
It's quoting. It just comes naturally. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I think that, we need to be people, and I think this is one of the things that a social media culture struggles with is there's not enough time to be reflective, because I've got to be up on everything and I've got to be dialed in, or whatever the word you use. I got to be in it.
Yeah.
And you get screen focused, and you get content focused, but you lose meaning. You can ingest a whole lot of content but not get meaning from it, right? You can ingest a whole lot of information but not be able to put it together for meaning. So somehow in our lives, if you're doing what you're doing, if this is what you're doing all the time, and you don't have some kind of okay, what do I do just to step back and process? There's nothing about this medium that is process oriented. It is immediate, and it is intensive, and it is demanding attention. And you have algorithms that are designed and functioning to keep you out of reflective mode.
Yeah. Right?
That's what they do. That's how it sells. That's how you market. You look at one thing, you say, this is, and the algorithm says, oh, he wants this. He wants this kind of t-shirt. Then boom, 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 boom. I got tons of opportunities to buy t-shirts or shoes. And so you have to say, okay, that's all coming at me. At what point do I step back and say, do I really need the shoes? Or am I just attracted to the shoes, and now that's feeding on that? I think same thing with content. It's killer in political world. It's killer. The way people ingest political stuff is just nightmarish. But I think in anything, your life should have where do I go to collect my brain and take this stuff and sort it out. I'm a Christian, so that's what prayer does. But I'm not presuming everybody who's watching this is a Christian. So where do I go? How do I orient? What are the values that I take to begin to orient and shape and screen out things so that I don't get lost in the world that I'm following?
Yeah.
I think that's a big issue, and I think and that's not just your generation. I think my generation's in its own way susceptible, because they don't even understand. They go on and they have a feed, and they think all the news they get is actually real news, right? Like, they don't get that this is all commentary. It's not actually information. It's commentary, and they buy into it, and they go God knows where in their thinking on things, because they don't recognize you're being fed. You're not going to get it. It's coming and getting you. I'm never going to diss it. I'm never going to sort of say, you know what, we just need to get rid of the phones. That's dumb. I just think we have to not let phones and the technology through which the information comes rob us of our essential humanity. Florida big truck lawyers. I think that's cool. You have lawyers just for big trucks. Yeah, this is where we are.
We took a quick break to re-navigate and get back on track and listen to some Leonard Skinner. So, welcome back.
We were going through Jacksonville.
Yeah, because we're going to Jacksonville.
Everybody knows that's where they're from.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. Any Leonard Skinner fan knows that's where you have to listen to him. I want to shift gears here. So I was asking a lot of questions about ministry, about culture. So you've parented a lot for 26 years actively for me, and then
36 years.
36 years.
Yeah. Wow. Freaks me out.
So, what would you say is something that a lot of parents would have issues with right now? So, like, we're just talking about social media. There's a lot of parents that are like, I don't know how to engage this. I don't know how to help my kids engage this.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have 36 years of experience. That doesn't necessarily mean wisdom, but usually experience equates to wisdom. So, what would you say to parents that are like trying to engage with culture as it is today, that they themselves may not know what discernment is, and they're trying to teach their kids how to be discerning on social media?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I'm grateful I'm not parenting right now, that I didn't have to deal with that. We were just at the beginning of cell phones when my kids were in their teens, and so what parenting is now, I think, is extraordinarily difficult. So basically, what I've seen people do well, and what advice they seem to followed well, was generally trying to hold your kids out of social media for as long as possible, even if they feel like they're kind of behind everybody else. Just because, and I think studies are showing this, the effect of social media, both the information that they're getting that they're having trouble processing because we attribute more maturity to kids these days than we probably should, in terms of their ability to process complex things and all that's coming at them. We have a difficult time enough as adults doing it, and so you take kids who are early teens, preteens, and it's just a lot coming at them. You add to that component the interactive component and the foolish things that happen interactively on phones, whatever messaging kids are using. The amount of things that are said and communicated that are difficult for kids, bullying, all those kind of things. So we all kind of know that. That's our fear. Nobody, I think, is looking at the phones and saying, wow, this is nothing but a great experience. I can't wait my kids to get into the phones. They're living with, this is how to do this. So number one, I would say we can't let a kid's sense of being left out govern when and how we give them the use of a phone and social media. That can't be the thing that's most important. Number two, I think I've had one parent say to me, and it's not bad advice. You're mature enough to have a phone when you're mature enough to drive a car, which is sounds kind of radical, but the point they were making was it takes a level of maturity to be able to learn to drive a car and handle that, and I think it does with phones too. So if there's a way to meet out, the hard part I think is the various blocks and those kind of things. They work, sometimes they don't work. It's very difficult to begin to cut back on something that you've let out. So one of the things we try to do, even with our kids, was make sure that we didn't have them extend out into the worlds they were in and then have to pull them back because they weren't handling it. We wanted to see them handling things responsibly, and then gave them further opportunity. So maybe a good principle for parents is give your kids an opportunity to prove a level of maturity and responsibility towards something that you can control before you give them over to things that are more difficult for you to control. And if they're making good judgments, if they're not kind of sucked into the negative parts of it, I think some kids can use a phone much better than others. And again, I think in a family, if you had, there may be, you may have kids, one kid can really handle it well, another kid can't. I don't think having, well, as a family, this is the way it's all done. Each kid needs their own learning pathway. That's what, part of it's that. Just, we need to, each kid has certain strengths, certain weaknesses, and we need to parent in regard to those things.
Which one of us do you feel is most, which one of us, me or the girls, is most qualified to handle that responsibility?
Well, I mean, you were, because you were being constantly watched by your sisters.
Okay.
Like, because your Grant was 6 years younger than his youngest sister. So he had 3 older sisters who basically, were collectively watching every move you made. So, but if you're talking, I think my middle daughter probably had the most sensitive conscience.
Okay.
I would say that way.
Okay.
And was most internally aware of a sense of right and wrong.
Okay.
I may get killed for that. I may have to edit that out. But I think they would generally agree.
Okay. Which kid of the 4 was the easiest to parent?
Well, I think, we had incredibly easy. I mean, we just look at ourselves, Jill and I just look at ourselves, and man, we just skated through parenting. And we had trials, but we didn't have those experiences where people just kind of lay at night wondering if they're going to survive it. Most difficult, oh gosh.
You said who's the easiest?
Who's the easiest?
Yeah, who's the easiest?
I legitimately can't answer that question. Only because each one, I mean, you were easy from the standpoint of the fact that again, you had all kinds of supervision in your life. And also, I think, but the hard thing, the hard thing about you was we had raised 3 girls, and I think your mom had instincts on how to raise girls, but no instincts on how to raise boys, and she obviously didn't grow up a boy, and so, like, there were things that I knew that I wanted to make sure I was handling, that she wanted to handle, and there was more tension between us, probably with you, because I'm like I'll give you an example. To me, and I don't want to come across as sexist with this, but
no one's watching this, so don't worry about it. It's okay.
But to me, every kid to a certain extent, and I think in my mind, boys in particular, they need planned catastrophes. They need planned failures. They need to be put in situations where, this isn't going to go well. And I think a mom, a lot of times, that can be a challenge. So we're not talking about just let him go do and clean up the mess later. We're talking about, I think he needs to be tested and challenged. Every kid does. And I think it's a failure in today's parenting where there isn't this conscious effort to put kids in situations where they can fail and grow and recover in a protected way. So I think that, so with you, there was more of a tension between us.
What was the thing what was my failure? What was the thing you let me fail at?
Just, like things like, getting hurt by girls.
Getting dumped.
Getting dumped, yeah. And dealing with, being outside of a group, not being, and
Not being cool.
not being
Got it.
cool,
Got it.
or
Yep.
wanting to be cool in a way that you weren't. And so yeah. But again, on the scale of things, those were minor. But I didn't mind you. If you couldn't do something, you got a job or something like that. It was hard. It's like, yeah, of course it's hard. Work's hard. So.
Whereas mom would be like, let's sit down and figure it out.
Oh yeah, let me help you. Like I'm saying, we had a lot of things about, let him fail. Let him fail the test. Let him, she'd be like, let me help him. And I was like, no, I think, he just needs to fail. As I did.
What was the hardest thing about Kelsey moving away? So Kelsey was the first one to move away.
Yeah.
I'm the second. What was the hardest thing about Kelsey moving away?
Oh, I just, it was tied into her getting married, which we were grateful for, and, love her husband Riley, but it wasn't just moving away. It was, this is a transition out of our home. And so having her used to being there, the oldest two had already moved out. And so there's just feeling like, how will we stay connected? They've done a phenomenal job on their end, and we've tried to do on our end to stay connected. But, having your kids move away. I mean, I will tell you this, though. When I decided to move up from Georgia to Pennsylvania, my parents just said, what we care most about is that you're where you think you're supposed to be, and that you're doing what you think you're supposed to do, and we can support that, and that so affected me because I felt like I wasn't disappointing them, I wasn't rejecting them. They were in a sense ushering me into a place in my life, and I never forgot that. And it cost them relationally with us, because they were in a different part of the country, and we maintained it and we visited a lot, but it wasn't the same that they grew up with their grandkids. And I felt like, that's one of those things where early on I felt like I've got to be prepared to handle that opportunity like they did. And so in the back of my mind the whole time, it's just exactly there. She's making a decision. She's going somewhere for a good reason. You're going somewhere for a good reason. My job is to support that and let you know that it doesn't affect either our desire to be together or our attempts to be together. And I recognize that over the course of time, there's a good chance that all of my kids will move around in various ways. Might live closer, might live farther away. But for parents, it's hard to see kids go.
Because you're describing a dynamic that probably most people have not experienced either as a kid or as a parent, or that they themselves.
Yeah.
Like they themselves have just probably not experienced that.
Yeah.
What's a factor that leads to deterioration in the relationships between the parents and kids? It's like something you see in counseling and something you've seen just in general, where it's like when this tends to happen, and it usually leads to disunity and ultimately like the family not being close.
Yeah. There are a couple of things that I see a lot of times. First of all, I don't put it on the kids. Like, parents will say, well, my kid just isn't responsive anymore, they're rebelling, whatever it is. Kids do that, right? It's like what you do. But it's interpreted as rebellion, when a lot of times it's just I'm trying to differentiate from you. I don't want to live in your shadow. They do stupid things, but it doesn't necessarily mean, I hate you. It just means you're kind of in the way of things I want to do. I think for parents, who's mostly what I relate to, is it's a couple of things. One is they build their identity into parenting in an unhealthy way. they sort of see the way their kids turn out as a validation of themselves or their efforts. And you're putting, if you're a conscientious parent, I mean, you could be a single parent. If you're a conscientious parent, you're pouring your life into your kids. You're spending a tremendous amount of money, a tremendous amount of time, emotional energy. You're going to be heavily invested. But there's a difference between being invested in the growth of your child and having your identity wrapped up in the success of your child. However you define success, it might be, I want my child to go to the best schools. I want to do this. And so you end up pushing them to a lot of activities to accomplish a success goal that you've set that they haven't really had a part to play in. It might be happiness. I want my child to be happy at all times, and so you don't let them experience failure. You don't give them those opportunities to have supervised struggles. You helicopter them. Or another thing you do, and this is very common, is parents, they don't see the necessity to translate from what I would call authority-based parenting to influence-based parenting. And that comes a lot sooner than people think it does. And if you don't start cultivating the transition of I could exercise authority, but increasingly my authority can be disregarded and will have to be, I've seen it with people where they pile on consequences. Well, you did this, and so now we're going to do this, and they end up with all these consequences. And I think at that point, your kid is basically going to kind of say, you know what, consequences don't bother me that much anymore. I can work around them. And you lose influence. And so a lot of parents, there's a control that they're after. They want to have control, and they don't recognize it. You're trying to move to an adult relationship over time where you have two adults. One's a parent, one's a child, but you're both adults. And influence isn't something that you can impose. Influence is something that you have to have somebody ask for. I mean, I think what you guys do, what you're doing, there's a lot of influencing because people are asking for it. They're saying, "Hey, help me out this. I'm doing." That's a great spirit. You need to have that spirit as a parent, where I want to learn from you. And over time, if a lot of times parents, they live too much in authority and control, well beyond when that's a helpful thing for a parent-child relationship, and they start thinking long-term. Eventually, this person's going to be an adult, and what I want is a meaningful relationship with that adult, not a kid that turned out good. And I've had parents. I was talking to somebody recently about this, where if their kids are struggling, let's say they have a college-age kid or after or whatever, and they're just failing to thrive at that point in their lives, and they make dumb decisions, and maybe they cause themselves difficulties through choices. A parent always has to ask, at what point is the way you chose to live your life not my fault? Right? If you're 45 years old and I'm still feeling guilty for the choices you're making, then at some point along the line, you didn't effectively differentiate yourself. At some point, if I'm an adult, my decisions, I can't point back to my parents and say, you caused me to do this.
What does a good parent relationship, parent-child dynamic in adulthood look like? What are some characteristics of that?
I think being able to be in a 2-day drive and not really like I got to get out of here for either one of them. Right? That's a test. We're in the test right now.
Yeah, we're in the test.
I think, again, what you would like is a sense of friendship. It's obviously not going to be peer in the sense that you still always will have a parent-child dynamic, or at least you'll have a parenting dynamic. I don't say parent-child, but you'll have, like, my kids, for whatever it matters will always view me as their parent. They've only had me as a parent. They've had me and my wife, their mom. So my successes and failures, I have a fixed role in their lives. Parent. This is my parent. So when they think about parenting, they think about their own parenting, think about what is it like to have been parented. I'm the person in that picture, right? So that's never going to change. I have the same with my mom. She's 93, right? And she's still my mom. Like, I don't, that because I only had one mom and she's it. Only had one dad. So I think that a good relationship is supportive. I think a good relationship is two-way. There's as the older person, I can learn from my kids, and increasingly as they develop wisdom, I can learn from their wisdom. Increasingly, they're going to be exercising decisions over me. Being able to bring a perspective that might feel corrective without either person feeling obligated to go with that. You know, if I felt like one of my kids was making a choice or doing something that wasn't wise, I would hope that I could approach them and say, "Can I talk with you?" And
do you feel like you do?
So yeah, I think so. Yeah. And that they could do that with me. You know, I've had daughters, and you've done it, but I've had my daughters call me up and say, "Dad, I don't know if you know, but when you did this in that context, this is the way that affected this." And I should be able to receive that. That should be part of my adult relational meaning in my life. I think we should be able to have that with, in a parent-child relationship with adults. What kills it is when kids have to feel like they're constantly having to build walls to keep the parents from encroaching or asserting too much influence. So, yeah, so those are things I think, and again, if you have people who are listening who have young kids, this is, you're talking, this is a ways off.
Well, but think about it this way. You transition from parent to grandparent.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them probably have people that are transitioning in their lives. They're probably they probably would struggle with that dynamic shift because it's hard to become a grandparent.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to get out of parent mode.
Yeah.
When you're like, I've done all this stuff, and you turned out okay enough to have kids. So maybe I should maybe take my advice and get my help. What do you think is the key to success to become a good grandparent? If you got
know your lane.
There you go.
Stay in your lane. I think where people make mistakes is they try to correct their parenting mistakes by grandparenting. That doesn't work. If they weren't attentive, they're over attentive to grandkids. All it does is create frustration and bitterness for kids. I think you've got to, it's funny, one of the things Jill and I talk a lot about is we have a lot of young grandkids right now, talking 6 and under, right? And so their parents really need us. They just literally, hey, we're watching, Jill's at home this week watching 4 of them while the others are at a youth camp. And so that's a great thing. You're serving your family by watching them, by watching the kids, by providing things. But you have to recognize that as your grandkids get older, you move from being essential to being invited. There may be a point where it's essential that we're there, but within a few years, the oldest kid's going to be babysitting his or her siblings. They don't need us to babysit. And so we might be on the outside of certain things. And then the crazy thing, and this is, I think, where folks in the world you're you're doing this podcast for probably have experience is things like holidays. You like think about this. It's crazy math. Okay, I have 4 kids, right? So I'm thinking Christmas, whatever it is, Christmas. We always have Christmas at our house. That's our tradition, whatever that is. And okay, then they all get married. Now there are double the number of there's 5 families, us and 4 other families, parents that have input into how that holiday goes, right? So now you have everybody married, and now you're split off. Now you've got 5 competing interests in that situation, and then every sibling in that family has gotten married to somebody. So you could be at 25 or 30 different agendas for a holiday before you know it, right? And so if you just sort of say, well, as a grandparent, we always have the kids at our house, man, you become, and so grandparents don't do that. You become the place people don't want to go, because you become the place where the only reason they're there is out of obligation to keep you from being upset with them. And so, that's not what you want. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want to be like, okay, here's my holiday, but we got to go see your folks. If we don't see your folks, we're going to hear it for the next month. I don't think that's what a grandparent wants, is their kids showing up, giving them the afternoon, leaving, being grateful that they fulfilled the obligation. I think, it's up to us to be smarter than that and think through, how do we deal with this complex dynamic of multiple families? Could be vacations, could be whatever it is. That's a navigation you have to do, and not be the people who are constantly demanding the kids treat them like they're the only grandparents involved.
Almost making your place a safe space.
Yeah, just I don't want to be the pressure point. It's like, and part of it is me being lazy. I don't want that pressure. I don't want to have to deliver something. Like, come on in, And if you can't do it this year, that's fine. We'll miss you, but I'm not going to. You have to develop your own traditions, and that may involve not always doing my tradition.
Let me shift gears here.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on death? Do you fear it? Are you scared of it?
No, I'm not scared of it. I mean, my faith gives me peace and comfort that death is not annihilation, that there is reward for life, there is blessing, there is heaven, and the things in this world that cause pain will ultimately be resolved, and that death, though it is an enemy, is not. It's a defeated enemy, and there is an after. So I don't fear death. I think that I don't suffer.
What's your ideal death? What's like if you could?
Oh wow!
Like, how old would you be? What would life be like? And you're like, man, yeah, if I could go out doing that, if I could go out like that, that'd be.
I think if I were
great.
I think if I were playing guitar in the E Street Band, and I was shocked to death on stage.
Shocked to death?
Shocked, like
shocked.
Electrically shocked.
Oh,
like something happened. That would be the idea, where I'm in the middle of playing a solo. If you really want to know.
With Bruce?
With Bruce.
Okay, what song you play with Bruce as you go out?
Oh wow.
Because you're gonna ruin that song as you die, just so you know. Like for the
I
rest of the
know.
people there. That's a hard way to go out, because essentially
you don't want to ruin a great song.
You ruin a whole concert.
Darkness on the Edge of Town. That's when I'd love to do that, and then just boom.
Right
that would be and that would make that song just really resonate. So
it'd be a closer.
It'd be a closer, yeah.
Right there.
So
that's funny.
no, I think the ideal is that what everybody longs for is to have a relatively peaceful death, surrounded by people you love, and having lived a life where you've been able to close off the things you need to close off. Relational things, pass on things, being able to have enough awareness. I mean, one of the things people fear, obviously, is anything where your mental capacity diminishes. That's what most people I know. That's if you who are my age and older. That's their fear. They can deal with a lot of physical issues, but losing your mental state is increasingly what people fear. So that's there, because I don't, I'm not a mechanic. I don't do it with my hands. Everything I do is in my brain.
Yeah.
And so if that starts to go, I don't have any fallback skills to work on. So it'll happen eventually, but I'd like for it to that not be the case. But I don't have a choice. You have to accept what God gives, and it's not a thing I have to worry about because I don't have a choice in it. So,
because like
it's a real thing to me. I was telling Melissa the other night. I said, okay, I've got a file of photos that I want in my slideshow when I die. And I said, because it irritates me. I do so many funerals and people botch the slideshow. And I'm like, you guys are all talented. You should be able to curate. You should be able to put together a nice slideshow that whatever I'm, with Jesus, whatever it is, I'm watching and saying, yeah, that pretty much, that's me. You got it. And as opposed to I just see awful, why did you put, it's one of those things, that's a fuzzy shot. And it's just a bunch of people with the heads turned the other direction. Well, we wanted to put it in because it was a picture of Aunt Ethel. You don't need Aunt Ethel in that shot for that slideshow. She died 15 years ago. That's not an important picture. And you don't need a bunch of studio shots. Here's another picture of him in a suit or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The good shot, right?
Yeah.
And so I said,
so you're curating.
So I'm curating my own shots.
You're curating your
death. Now I'm not going to get the final version because that would not be that'd be macabre. But and I'm assuming I'll get some good pictures remaining.
Yeah, you should.
But I've collected enough to where I thought if you just pick from these, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
So.
What do you say to old people that get stuck in their ways?
We all do. I think that's a right of being an old person. Because at some point you're just not gonna open up a new thing to get good at. I think you should always be trying to learn, but so I think don't be cranky. Don't be easily irked by things. One of the things that happens when you're getting close to my age, at some point there's a technology ride. If you imagine the world as a Disney World, but just with different kinds of technology and some newer than others. At some point, you just look at that ride that's coming up and you say, I don't need to go on that one. Right? I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be something implanted in your eye.
What was it for you? What was the one that you were?
Well, I haven't gotten there yet. I mean, actually, I have.
VR? You haven't done VR yet?
I haven't done VR. Yeah, I'm probably not going to do that. Partly because I don't. I have depth perception problems. I've never seen that stuff well anyway. But yeah, it'll be something related to. Some kind of a communication where I'll just realize, I ain't gonna do that. I'm just not gonna do it. I'm not gonna I don't have time to get good at that. My Jill's grandfather, his was automatic bank teller things, just
Like
machines.
ATMs?
ATMs, yeah, which they didn't call them like that. They call it automatic bankers. And so he was so scared of those, like he wouldn't touch one. Whereas I was using them like crazy, it was a new technology. I mean, it's been around for 40 years. So you're going to jump off at some point. I'm not getting on that ride.
Yeah.
And so, and everybody will. I think it's good to try to stay as current as possible in music, but you're going to recognize, there are sounds, there are types of stuff that's going to come out that I'm just not going to try to get really, I'm really into that.
What because we spent the day listening to a lot of different songs.
Yeah.
I showed you John Bellion.
Mm-hmm.
Did you like him?
Not Skinnerd. No, I mean, I know enough about music to know that John Bellion's immensely talented in multiple ways.
Yeah.
And, maybe not quite Prince talented, but at that level.
Sure.
Right? But I also know, I mentioned to you, his song, he's a producer who's performing.
Yeah.
He's not a performer who's producing, in my mind. Like, I live in the world of I want real instruments played by people. It can be a lot of different styles of music. Or I want, what is the structure of the song, and what we were listening to is great stuff, but it's just it's produced sound that has a sonic effect on you with lyrics attached.
Yeah.
Right? It's great. But it would not be something I'd say, oh yeah, that's where I'm gonna go. I probably wouldn't see that show.
Are you the type of person that's like, back in my day, music was played by real instruments and it was good?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm a guitarist guy, so I'm always going to be partial to guitar. But I recognize that, there isn't a this is back when the music was good. It's just what you tend to prefer. And I tend to prefer things that come out of a blues world, which was always guitar based. And that's familiar to me, and I that's my groove, it's my jam. My John, as we say in Philly. So JT and I do a podcast with friend JT, who's a African American guy in his 30s. And we do.
Why is this race relevant then?
Well, what I'm saying is that one of the things we talked about was music and generational differences in music. And so I just said, man, I've just never, I get hip hop, I get rap, I see this, I see the skill in it, I see the art in it, I see the power in it.
Yep.
But I've always been a music first guy. I don't listen to lyrics first.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard. I have to work at it.
Yeah. Well, did you ever listen to? Didn't you say you liked "To Pimp a Butterfly"?
Who?
"To Pimp a Butterfly" by Kendrick. Didn't you say you listened?
Yeah. I mean Kendrick and Drake, and I've listened to all that stuff.
You listen to Drake?
Yeah. But I mean, it's not like I just go back and say I need more of this. I'm like, okay, I want to get a feel for it. I want to get what's there, but it's a different culture than I've sonically grown up in, and developed an ear for.
That's a very careful way to navigate that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it is. I mean, it's a sonic culture, and it wasn't derived out of my world.
Yeah.
And so the metaphors and all those things are not part of my experience. But I think it's my responsibility to understand it as an art form and to appreciate it and be able to discern when it's well done and when it isn't.
Yeah. Yep.
So I want to be that level, and I want to be affected by people who do it at the best level.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a function of art.
Well, so what do you say to people that are like, because it's secular, I'm not going to listen to it?
Oh, that would kill all of my music. I think there's a difference in being secular and being profane.
Okay. What's the difference?
Well, I think one, secular is just something that doesn't specifically speak to a religious context. It's either religious or secular. That's all it means. So it's either religious music or it's not religious music, and a religious, performance or not religious performance context. Jazz isn't inherently secular. You can listen to Charlie Hayden play a bright bass and a whole album of spirituals, and it's powerful jazz, and it's there's no, it's just not a good thing. Profane would be, I am looking to shock, I'm looking to trade on shock value, and I'm looking to speak in a way that potential offense is part of my goal. For someone to put out something that is
what would you say to people that are like, because there's a Christian culture that says because it isn't taking that verse, like whatever is good, whatever is true, whatever is holy, think about these things.
Sure.
And then they apply that verse to non-religious content, and they say because this is non-religious, I can't. I have a newly developed conviction to avoid it.
Yeah. Well, when I became a Christian, I realized one of the things I realized is how much the music I listened to functioned as worship. It defined my view of reality. It was where I went to alter my moods or affect my moods. If I'm down, I need to go listen to this. If I'm angry, I go listen to this. And so music occupied a huge place, and I needed to break from it. And so basically in the 80s, I listened to very little quote-unquote secular music. It had to really be big for it to break through. Because
Even Bruce?
Well, Bruce is big. That's his height.
Yeah.
But I wasn't listening to Bruce a lot. Not because I was like all of a sudden, it's sinful music, but I realized it evokes things in me that I don't have enough control over yet to be able to listen to it without that. So it took a while to kind of get back into it. And then in the 90s, I had impressionable kids riding around the car with me. And so I realized I've got to be careful what I'm listening to. But I started to develop the joy of curating listening for my kids. And so I want to introduce things to you and tell you what you're listening and why it's good. And not that you have to like it, but here's why I like this. And it was a communal experience. And so
what sucks about it is that back before the streaming days, before Spotify and iTunes and stuff, what we would do is on my birthday, or like our birthday, each kid's birthday, we would go to the Mustard Seed, which was a Christian store. Yeah. And you'd say for your birthday you can get one new album. Mm-hmm. And like that was a big choice because that was like this is my album for this year. Yeah. I'm gonna be listening to this album, and if it's a bad album, it's gonna be a bad. And I actually tried one year to get a Switchfoot album. And you said, Grant, no, you're too young. You said I was too young to get the Switchfoot album.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I might have been 6 or 7, but you said, I think you let Kelsey get it. Yeah. But you did not let me get it on my birthday, so that was a really tough one.
But I think
she got a double pack actually. That
year.
I think she got like one of those like twin CD situations.
Yeah, no, she maxed out.
Yeah.
I think part of it is because I realized the reason you're wanting it is to be treated like a big person, not to enjoy the music for yourself.
Wow. I was like 6 though.
Yeah, I know. And you just wanted to be 8. You wanted to be 9, and that's 9-year-olds get Switchfoot. And I was like, no, let's find something that I think will be.
No, I was meant to live for so much more.
Yeah, there's a time to learn that, but not at 6. It's a later life lesson.
Do you think he sheltered us?
That's probably a better question for you guys to answer. I don't think I don't observe from your lives that you felt deprived. You know,
I wouldn't say we were, yeah.
but there are vast parts of teenage world that you never experienced that you didn't know about. And guess what? You didn't need to know about it, and it no longer exists anyway. You know, it's just the teenage world is vaporous, and one of the dangers of going back to parenting is kids think that what is vapor is really substance. You don't have the discernment to understand the difference between what is passing, what is the Bible, you know, uses words like futility. All this stuff, it is passing. It is not real. You know, your need to have a girlfriend at 15 or a boyfriend at 15 is not real. Mature people recognize you don't need to be validated by somebody liking you. Now's not the time to build that into your worldview. Now's the time to help you see you don't need to be validated. I think someone like you need to be who you are and let other people relate to you based on who you are, not whether you need them or not. So there's a lot of things that go on in the teenage years is, you know, vanity. In the Bible, use of that, which is it's just passing. It's not substance. So I think that but you know, getting back to music, I don't like the argument that, well, it's not Christian, therefore you shouldn't listen to it, because I think that it misses the point of art in general. And I view popular music, not all popular music, just like not all painting, as artistic. And therefore we were created to love art and to enjoy art and to benefit in our souls from exposure to art, and music should have that effect, and we don't want to deprive people of that. But I think you curate it, and I think that as mature, responsible people, we still have responsibility to say, what do I listen to and why? If I'm a man and I'm listening to misogynist lyrics, and I just say it's because I like this or that, I'm thinking that's a problem. You know, that's a problem. That artist is trading on you listening to things that you're not going to say publicly. You know, if you really think this is good, then you go into your work environment, whatever, and you say this is what you think about life. You know, or you ask yourself, why am I listening to it? So everybody, you know, it's a conscious thing for people, but I think that you need to ask those questions. But as art form, we never want to deprive people the opportunity to enjoy art. Just help them. And it's great to engage. It's great to, you know, it creates cultural engagement. It creates commonality.
This is what I need you to do. I need you to, just for my own enjoyment, I need you to give me, like, next time I see you or text me, say, like, this is my favorite Kendrick Lamar song, and this is my favorite Drake song.
Okay.
That would be crazy.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. I'll have to go back and look. It's been a while. But
to be fair, Drake's put out a lot of crap recently, so
Yeah.
It's like it'll be easier to find a good Kendrick song.
yeah. But again, what I might pick may not be, this is,
Might not.
you know, it might just be this appeals to me. A lot of times when it comes to hip hop, the things that I like are going to be the more mundane things.
Yeah.
The edgy stuff is just going to be harder for me to grasp.
Well, but then that's the funny thing is, like, for, like, even just, I just pulled those two names out, but, like, Drake's like basically pop.
Yeah, I know.
Like, he's basically a pop artist.
Yeah.
But Kendrick's like a poet.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a different dynamic.
Yeah.
I'd just be so curious with, like, how you'd engage that and then what you take away from it.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be really interesting.
The hard part about it, in picking one song, which I'll do, is I think you want to understand an artist in their repertoire. You want to understand where that music fits in their development. We just did today with John Bellion.
Yeah.
If I go back into, you know, his second EP or mixtape, and I say, oh, this is what I like, you think, well, this is not who he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? If I go to the most recent or the biggest hit,
Well, and like there's some artists. Not every rap artist is this way. Not every like band is this way. But like there are some artists where it's like it's meant to be an album.
yeah,
It's meant to be like this is the record.
it's a record, yeah.
That because it's a cohesive thought. Like not everybody does that nowadays, but like
Yeah, but I think hip hop artists tend to do that more than
they
most
try
other
to
artists.
do like some kind of subject.
Yeah,
Usually it's
there's
like
a subject
yeah.
or there's an evocative palette they're working on.
There's a biographical aspect
Yeah.
to it too. All right, well, let's close this up. Thank you for having me. And thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thanks for creating me.
I didn't create you. I just begat you.
Yeah. That's hilarious. I'm gonna miss you, Dad.
I miss you too, buddy. It's
Uh,
been fun. I'm
yeah.
glad we're able to do this, and we will stay connected in a lot of ways. I was thinking Eagles games, we'll either need to watch them together if you're there by yourself, or we'll have to do chats after, debrief on the game. Because I can't imagine. That's the thing. I feel bad for you to be down here during the Eagles
I
season.
didn't watch a single game with you last year. What are you talking about?
No, but you're able to follow it. You're gonna be down here
Yeah.
with nobody following it.
Yeah.
You're gonna be there in Tampa
Actually,
Bay
you know,
Bucks.
actually, I heard someone said that in Clearwater there's got to be a Philly bar.
Oh, there will be. There will be.
So I
What I'm saying is that you may not. It may be like 45 minutes away.
True. So I'm
And,
not gonna go find my
Yeah,
people.
yeah. So, but that's what I mean. You'll be down here and not have access to sports radio for it as easily, and you're just gonna feel cut
The
off.
essentials.
You're gonna feel cut off. You're gonna feel cut off
So I'm gonna need you to relay
in the playoff, in the baseball playoffs.
Yeah, I'm gonna need you to relay me that information.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's gonna prioritize. Well, the one thing I will get is I will get a ton of Inter Miami stuff happening. So I'll
Yeah.
fill you in on Inter Miami,
Yeah.
and you can fill me in on all the Philadelphia stuff. That'll be good. And let's hopefully meet in the middle when the Miami Heat beat the 76ers in the Eastern Conference Finals.
But you're gonna be a Sixers fan.
I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah. Don't convert.
I'm not going to. No. All right.
You know.
See you on the next pod, guys.